Hi there, my name's Andrew with the American Heritage Museum, and today I'll be taking you on a tour through the cockpit of our German Bf.109. The Bf.109 was the primary fighter aircraft of the German Luftwaffe throughout the entirety of World War II, and on top of that, the aircraft also holds the record for being the most mass-produced, single-seat, single-engine fighter aircraft in history, with close to 35,000 units produced. Now, we had a lot of questions on our last Bf.109 video asking whether this airplane is a G-10 or G-14 variant, and while it's a great question, there's not really a clear-cut answer. All throughout its history, the Bf.109 as an airplane has suffered from a lack of standardization, and with that, it makes it very difficult to narrow down any one clear-cut variant. When this airplane was built, it was initially designated a G-10. However, it later underwent restoration work that puts it more in line with a G-14. And so even though the airplane was originally a G-10 and does share parts from both variants, we here at the museum choose to display it as a G-14, as that's what it more closely resembles today. That being said, the cockpit shouldn't be seen as that of a G-14. It should be seen more so as a generic late-war Bf.109 cockpit. Now, before we get in, it is worth noting that this airplane is equipped with what's called the Haube canopy. This is a late-war canopy design made up of 3 large acrylic panels inside of a relatively minimalistic frame, providing the pilot with much better visibility than found in the earlier war birdcage-style canopies. Now, interestingly, the Bf.109 never used a sliding hood-style canopy, like the P-51, for instance. What it did use was a side-opening canopy, which tips over the right side and hangs open, allowing the pilot to get in from the left side only. Now to get in, we're first going to place our right foot in the foothold, our right hand in the handhold, step up onto the wing, my left foot, then I'm going to swing my rear end around to the back side of the cockpit, and now we're on the plane. Now that we can get a look into the cockpit, we can see that we have a metal bucket seat, as is standard with World War II era fighters, and our 4-point harness. Now, the reason there's no padding on the seat is because World War II era fighter pilots used seat parachutes, like the one I'll show on screen here, which just sits under your butt and doubles as both your parachute and your seat cushion. The Bf.109 has a notoriously small cockpit, and while I wouldn't necessarily disagree, it is worth noting that I'm a fair bit larger than your average Luftwaffe pilot, with your average German male around 1940 being about 5'6", and Erich Hartmann being about 5'9". So while yes, the cockpit objectively is rather small, it's also worth noting that my sitting in here at 6 foot tall and 220 pounds is not necessarily an accurate representation of what pilots at the time would experience. With all that covered, now we can start looking at the instruments and controls. Starting down on my lower left, we have 2 hand wheels, the outer one being for the flaps, and the inner one being for the horizontal stabilizer trim. Now, unlike most Allied fighters, the German Bf.109 doesn't use standard in-flight adjustable trim tabs. What it does use, though, is an adjustable tailplane. So by moving this hand wheel back or forth, we can tip the entire horizontal stabilizer up or down to trim our elevation. Moving up from the hand wheels, we have one of 2 air vents in the cockpit. This is just a way to get some air circulation if needed. And above that, we have the tail wheel lock. Forward of that, we have the elevator trim dial, as well as the fuel priming hand pump, and the prop pitch selector switch. Now this switch can either be set to automatic or hand, which is an abbreviation. Automatic being for, get this, automatic control of the prop pitch, and hand being for manual control of the prop pitch, which is handled via the thumb switch found on the throttle lever. Speaking of the throttle quadrant is found right here by the pilot's left hand. Overall, the quadrant is rather simple. We have the main throttle lever, along with the prop pitch thumb switch we talked about before, the fuel mixture lever, and a friction adjustment knob. Ahead of this, we have the mechanical gear indicator, showing us whether the landing gear is up or down. And behind that, we have the belly tank shutoff valve. Now, as best I can tell, the placard says, don't use the belly tank for fuel until at least 10 minutes after takeoff. Now, this would make sense in that when you're taking off, you want to use a known trusted fuel source, like your internal tanks. But once you have some altitude and you're cruising along, you can go ahead and swap over to your reserve tank on the belly. Moving up, we have the electric gear position indicator. This is the main indicator that you would use for your gear. The mechanical one is just in case this one should fail for whatever reason. To its right, we have the landing gear control buttons, with the red button for up and the blue button for down. And to their left, under this cover here, we have the starter pole switch. Moving up, we have the magneto switch with settings for mags off, magneto 1, magneto 2, and both mags on. To its right, we have the main electrical system circuit breaker button, as well as what I believe to be the MW50 switch. Now, for a little context, this airplane uses what's called MW50 for its water injection system. Now, this is a 50-50 mix of methanol and water with a little bit of anti-corrosive mixed in. Now, all the switch does is allows the use of MW50. It doesn't actually start the injection. That happens when the throttle is pushed all the way to the forward position. At that point, you can use this for about 10 minutes before you have to shut it off for at least 5, then back on for 10, and so on and so forth until you run out of MW50. Now for the instrument panel. Starting here on the left, we have the directional compass, which I believe is accurate and pointing towards north. Down here, we have the altimeter, measuring our altitude in kilometers. Here, we have the artificial horizon with the built-in turn and bank indicator. Down here, we have the airspeed indicator, measuring our indicated airspeed in kilometers per hour. Here, we have the ATA, or atmosphere absolute gauge. This measures the manifold pressure in atmospheres, or 14.7 psi. This system measures the total pressure, so it's sitting at about 1 ATA right now, as we are on Earth at only about 260 odd feet above sea level. Next, we have the engine RPM gauge. It is measured in the German version of RPM, which I will put on screen so that I don't butcher the pronunciation, but it is a direct equivalent to American revolutions per minute. Up here, we have the clock. Coming back down, we have the radio direction finder, which is part of a really cool radio navigation system that really deserves its own video, but in essence, it gives the pilot directions to get back to base. Below that, we have the propeller pitch gauge, followed by the coolant temperature gauge, the fuel quantity gauge, and the oil and fuel pressure gauges. Now for the stuff around the gauges. Firstly, we have the master weapon arming switch, along with the ammo counters. These are actually calibrated to the fire rate of the type of gun that they're attached to, and they measure the amount of time that the trigger is held down to keep track of the ammo count, rather than counting individual rounds of ammunition. Next up, we have the Revi C12D reflector gun sight. Now, unlike late war Allied gun sights, such as the Mark II and K-14, this doesn't have any sort of gyroscope system to it. It's just a fixed reference point for aiming the guns. And off to the right here, we can also see the backup iron sights mounted to the side, which do flip up and down depending on whether you need them or not. Moving down to the right, we have the other candidate for the MW50 switch. We also have the low fuel warning light, the emergency landing gear release handle, and the windshield cleaning valve, which as far as I can tell just sprays out windshield wash from the hose in front of the canopy. In the lower right of the canopy, we have the flare gun port, followed by the circuit breaker panel, fuse panel, and the dimmer switch for the cockpit lights. Moving down, we have the right-hand radiator shutoff valve, as well as a few things related to the oxygen system. In this grouping, we have the oxygen monitor gauge, the oxygen pressure gauge, measured in kilograms per square centimeter, and lastly, the oxygen regulator. Normally, there would be a number of parts and controls for the radio system below and behind the oxygen system, however they are not present on this example. In front of us, we have a pretty standard control stick used to control the ailerons and elevators. On the grip portion of the stick, we do have a trigger under the index finger to fire the machine guns, as well as a thumb button to fire the cannons. And interestingly, under the pinky finger, we have a button to charge the cannons. Down by our feet, we have the rudder pedals, which do incorporate toe brakes, and interestingly have an adjustable leather strap to hold your foot down to the pedal. A couple things worth noting up here in the front of the canopy. We have two UV cockpit lights. On the left here, we have the red canopy jettison handle. We have these two handles up near the top, which really do make getting in and out a bit easier. And in the very front, we have the armored glass pane in the windshield. Now, just for demonstration's sake, we're going to go ahead and close the canopy, see if we can figure out whether or not I could actually fly this thing. Now, keep in mind, I don't have a seat parachute at the moment, which means that I'm sitting with my eye level right around the middle of the gun sight crash pad. Now, if I lift my head up to where I can see over the nose, my head's touching the top of the canopy. And if I had a seat parachute, I'd be right up and around here somewhere too. So really, not all that much room, and the headrest isn't really going to do me a lot of good. It's not a very comfortable cockpit. And that just about wraps things up. I really hope you enjoyed the video and maybe even learned a little something new. If so, consider leaving us a like and maybe even subscribing, as it really does help us out a lot. If you'd like to learn more about this aircraft, feel free to check out our full walk-around video that I'll put on the screen somewhere up in there somewhere. In the meantime, my name's Andrew with the American Heritage Museum. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.